Welcome back to the Movie Guys Improvise podcast. You're listening to the voices of
Chill with Realms.
Jurassic Mark.
Faerhad Targaryen. Last month's episode was another classic brought to us by Jurassic Mark, 1963's The Great Escape. Great film. I think we all recommend it. It was a blind watch for all of us. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, it is no longer viewable for free on YouTube anymore. Otherwise, I would have linked the description in that video. However, do go and check that movie out if you have not seen it. Then check our review of it. Today, we're going to be reviewing another Disney classic. The last time we reviewed a Disney classic, I think, on this podcast was way back in season one. It was the remake of Aladdin, which I was actually quite fond of. Our retired co host, Al Rogers, was not, but we're reviewing the original classic today of 1998's Mulan. I gotta say, and I've mentioned this a few times already. I remember being a kid and just seeing ads for this on the Disney Channel, and this was the first movie I remember being excited to go and see in the theaters. Now, I feel like the story of Mulan, it's the story of a woman who has her father has to go fight in a war, but because her father is kind of elderly, she poses as a man, as his son, and takes his place in the war. So that's the premise of the movie. And I feel like this is a very uplifting story for little girls. But as a little boy, I was actually really excited for it. I guess because it deals with a lot of mature themes, and it's also the story of a war. Like it was leaning very action heavy. I guess that was my appeal to it. But of course, this wasn't the first Disney classic that I saw. It was the first one that I remember seeing in theaters, and it probably is one of my favorites to date. So I want to ask you, gentlemen, as initial impressions, was this the first time that y'all saw the cartoon Mulan, or was this a rewatch for you guys?
It was a rewatch for me.
Yeah, me too. I also remember seeing this movie when it came out, and I've seen it a couple of times since then.
Got it. Okay. And we're all around the same age, so it came out like around the same time for all of us. I saw it in theaters when it came out for the first time. And how do you guys rank this in terms of the other classic cartoon Disney movies? And it doesn't have to be just the ones with humans. Like The Lion King is probably the most popular, right? The original Lion King. There's also Aladdin, like I was mentioning before, Princess and the Frog, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, which is another one of my favorites. How do you guys rank Mulan in among these? I feel like Mulan generally, like consensus wise speaking, I feel like it is a lesser of the favorites among like most people, but I want to ask you guys how you guys feel.
For me, it would rank up fairly high on the chain for probably mostly for the fact that it's based around like the war. There's a lot of action in it, and then of course there's a lot of humor. They got Eddie Murphy in it. I was a fan of Eddie Murphy, so for me, it ranked up there pretty high.
I'd probably put it in like the B tier if we were using sort of a grade school system grading scale, like B plus, good, not necessarily one of the great Disney films, but good. I think it holds up pretty well overall.
Okay, so you're grading it based on like in comparison to the other Disney classic cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, compared to other Disney movies, I'd say it's not of the same caliber as some of the other Disney films we saw in the 90's, like Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King and Aladdin, but it's still a solid movie. The plot is pretty well constructed. It's a tight film. It keeps you engaged. So it's good.
Yep. Fun fact, actually, Beauty and the Beast was the first cartoon, it was the first animated film to be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. It didn't win, but I thought that was a pretty big deal at the time that it was nominated. You know what I mean? And Realms, speaking of Mushu, yeah, he's great in this movie, Eddie Murphy. However, he is not in the live action remake. Now, this episode of MGI is not about the remake, but I feel like it's kind of impossible not to compare this movie to the remake. So we're going to talk about that eventually. I'm just mentioning for now that there is no Mushu in the 2020 version
Wait,
of
they don't
Mulan.
even have Mushu the character?
No.
Damn. I thought you just meant no Eddie, like a new person playing. God damn.
Nah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Apparently, there's a bird lady
I
in it
haven't.
though.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a conversation, yeah, for a little bit later, like the realism or lack of that the remake has. And I do like want to talk about a few points of that later on, but we are here gathered together to talk about the classic 1998 beloved Mulan. So we've all seen it before, so this was a rewatch for us. And I have to say that I really, really do love this movie. There was a lot of emphasis on gender roles and cultural norms. It reminded me a lot of my own culture. Like the three of us, we also reviewed Never Have I Ever, which was a Netflix series, right? And although I'm not Indian, I am Bengali, but the cultures there have enough similarities that I'm just saying that, since you guys saw that in reference to Mulan, there is so much emphasis on making sure that the women in that society are prepped for being the ideal wife or the housewife to, bear children, to cook and clean. They also seem to be really obsessed with drinking tea. My culture is also really obsessed with that as well. So I just found that as an interesting parallel. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because at the end of the day, this is a kids movie, right? The main target audience, as implied violence there is in this movie and some violence overall, it's rated G. This movie was rated G in theaters. They got away with doing that. But as an adult, I feel like there is enough mature themes here. There are enough mature themes that I can still enjoy it as entertainment of my own, not just for like a kid, or if I'm watching it with a kid, like a niece or a nephew, or my own kids someday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. Would you guys agree, or am I just getting a little too ahead of myself?
No, I think there's something for everybody here. It does discuss society's expectations of people based on their gender, and then it bakes that discussion into the plot. I think that's in keeping with the original legend that this was based on, but I don't really know anything about that story.
Right. Me neither. So I do have to put out this disclaimer, or I already put one out already. Like, number one, I have not seen the remake, but we are going to talk about it later. And number two, I don't know anything about the original Mulan story. Like, I don't know anything about it at all. The original Chinese folk story. But if either of you do, I mean, JM, you said you don't either realms. If you do, feel free to chime in about it. But I can't make any comparisons to the original Mulan at all. But I'm also putting a lot of emphasis on my love for the movie because it's not perfect. Even after the more recent times that I've watched it, there are some plot holes in it that are never really brought up again,
Mm.
and I'm going to criticize it for it, but I just want you guys to know that I'm going to criticize the movie because I love it so much. That's why in this case why I'm going to be so critical of Mulan. I also have to say I understand, like I was saying, the main target audience are children, so I get why it could also come off as me thinking too deep about it, and you're not supposed to
Mm.
think that much about like a children's movie as well. But to get into it, really, the plot holes that I was referring to earlier. Number one, it's Mulan's horse. Mulan's family, the Fa family, right? That's what they were
Mhm.
calling it in the movie.
Yeah.
They had a lot of land. It seemed. What was the father's name? I forget the name of the father, but he seemed like an important.
Zoo, I think his name
Yes,
was. Yeah.
Fazu. Thank you. They had a great amount of property. They only had one child, the daughter Mulan, and they had a horse. So I guess they're kind of wealthy. It seems like Fazu was well known with
Mm.
throughout the entirety of China, because
Mhm.
eventually, like it even like they mentioned Fazu once Mulan got to the camp. But why is it that once Mulan got to the camp, she, besides Shang Li, I think that was the name of the hero character, right? The captain. They're the only two with a horse. Why didn't any of the other characters or any of the new recruits have horses? This was one of the biggest glaring plot holes for me once they were traveling in the snow up in the mountains, because
Mm.
Mulan's horse was carrying the rockets, right, in the carriage, and none of the other soldiers had a horse. Why was Mulan the only one there with a horse? Is it really just because her family was that wealthy? Or is that just a plot hole that you have to roll with in this movie?
Man, I was starting to think they didn't know, you know, too many horses to begin with, because what they had Mushu calling him a cow. Just on your cow.
Yep. Yeah.
Maybe it was a bring your own horse kind of situation. You know, some parties are BYOB. This is BYOH.
Right. That's the thing.
Ooh,
So
Hmm,
that could be a good point.
maybe it's just everybody else forgot to bring livestock.
how did they get there then? I mean,
It,
I would think that they had to
hmm.
travel a certain distance to get to the camp. They
It
definitely
could
didn't
also
walk.
be a status thing because, you know, these were basically draftees. You know, they weren't regular army. And if is coming from one of the only wealthy families in the region, maybe she's the only one who has a horse at her disposal to bring along, you know?
That makes sense. Yeah, that does make sense. But I could play devil's advocate and just say that if you're recruiting these people for a war, and if they don't have their own horses, but you're making them fight in a war, you better prepare them the best you can. And giving them horses would be, that, because the Imperial Army, Shang Li's father, like, he was the commanding officer, I guess. His entire army, every soldier had a horse. Every single soldier had a horse. So I mean, they all got slaughtered, but they came well prepared. But I'm just saying it could just be me thinking too much about it when it's not necessary. And what you're saying, JM, does make sense. So I can leave it at that for now. It's just something that I was wondering.
Hmm.
The next thing is the whole ancestor plotline, and Mushu, to like his introduction. I feel like a lot of it is comedic relief. Eddie Murphy does a great job with that. He was great, and I wonder why none of the other soldiers recruits, why none of their ancestors sent a guardian to help them or to help protect them. I was thinking that maybe they did, and we just didn't see them because they had to keep that a secret as well. Like, they had their own guardian animal that they had in their tent or whatever, and they were keeping that a secret. That's the answer I made up for myself. I don't even know if that's accurate, because if it's not, then it's like, why not? Why is Mushu the only guardian of a family that came to protect, the heir to the family?
Hmm. Maybe shoot. If anything, I hope they answered it in the second movie, because I didn't even know they made a second one until after we finished watching the first, and then they showed the second one was about to play next.
They made a lot of direct-to-video sequels of Disney movies back in the day. I remember it started with Return of Jafar, and then they made sequels to, I think, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, like Fox and the Hound. So maybe it's in Mulan too, which I haven't seen.
Yeah, they, like you were saying, there was a direct to video sequel to Mulan as well. It's on Disney Plus, but
Uh,
the quality of most of those direct to video sequels were way less quality than the theatrical releases of
yeah,
the
they
original.
didn't really have much money for those, and I think a lot of them were handled by Disney's TV people,
Yeah,
people who worked on, you know, TV series like Aladdin, the animated series, and whatnot. So, if I recall correctly, a lot of them just sort of feel like really long episodes of a TV show that was never made, you know?
you're absolutely right. But the thing is, most of these theatrical releases,
Hmm.
they were profitable. They made a lot of money. They returned on, the budget and
Hmm.
then some. So I would figure if they wanted to make a theatrical sequel, they
Hmm.
could. They do that with Pixar. They do that with Disney's new animation studio, like
Hmm.
Frozen and the new Frozen, right? So
Hmm.
back in the day, if they wanted to, they could have, but that's a story for another time, I guess, or a conversation for another time.
Yeah, I
Um,
read this book earlier this year called Disney War, which was about Michael Eisner, who was sort of the head honcho at Disney for a while. And it talked about how by the late 90s, when Mulan and Hercules were coming out, Disney's animated movies were getting more expensive because in the beginning, they didn't have much competition for animators. There weren't a lot of animation studios. But then DreamWorks was founded, and suddenly Disney had to compete for the best animators with DreamWorks, and so salaries went up. So it became harder for the animated movies to turn a profit after like 94 or whenever Jeffrey Katzenberg left the studio and helped found DreamWorks, but that's a story for another time. There's a lot of petty drama in Hollywood.
Wow.
Damn.
JM always dropping in with that cinema knowledge. Nice.
I'm a trivia junkie. What can I say?
No,
Own
yeah,
what you are. There you go.
well, I was gonna say I wouldn't have known that. That makes sense, and I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't mentioned it just now. That actually does make a lot of sense. Getting back to Mulando, I don't know if like the plot holes that I'm mentioning, I don't know if any of them are actually addressed in the sequel. Maybe they are, like in terms of Mushu, and if there are guardians of the other ancestors of the other families. I'm not sure. But speaking of guardians, here's one often talked about plot hole, if it even is one, that I have wondered about, that maybe you guys have thought about as well. Mulan's ancestors, they all agreed that it should be the great stone dragon that accompanies her and brings her back home. Mushu goes and tries to bring him to life, but he doesn't. And he ends up destroying the damn thing by the end of it. Why didn't the great stone dragon awaken? What was going on there?
I don't know. My biggest question on that one was, how the hell did he not realize that was Mushu with the damn stone on his head? Like, it makes me question how sharp the ancestors are.
Well, they spend all this time arguing. Maybe they were distracted, about so and so's great niece or whatnot going to market
Yeah.
or playing volleyball with people's heads.
Oh, that.
Yeah, I remember at the end when the guy's like tossing his head around.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. It maybe it was just, this was the first time a member of the family did something so treacherous that they hadn't awakened in a long time, and they just don't remember what the great stone dragon was supposed to look like. I don't know. I'm grasping at straws, Rams. I don't know how else to explain why the main ancestor wouldn't recognize what Mushu was doing there.
By the way, the first ancestor was voiced by George Takei, for those who didn't know. So.
Ah,
who was
I think I
that?
did know
Voice
that.
sounds familiar, that's why.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Who was that?
I did know that, but I forgot. So thanks for the reminder. Yeah, George Takei.
Yeah.
He
I
was
probably know him by face, but maybe.
Yeah, he's really big on Facebook. He was in the original Star Trek as Mr. Sulu, this great Japanese American actor, and he's done a lot of projects since then, but then late in life he became internet famous because he discovered memes, and he's got this massive social media following.
Oh man, I have to look him up.
Yeah, as soon as you see him, when you look him up, you'll recognize him. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, you'll know him when you see him.
Now that you mentioned it, JM, I can't get it out of my head that he was the ancestor.
Well,
Oh
he's
my
got
god.
that distinctive voice, the oh my, yeah.
True, true. Well, while we're on the subject of voice actors, I got I want to mention something, then I got a question. Number one, another fun fact: the voice actor for the Emperor, Pat Morita, who was the Mr. Miyagi from the Karate Kid series.
Oh, that's what that
Another little
was?
fun fact.
Oh,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Wax on Wax on.
Yep, that was him.
Nice.
yeah.
There was also BD Wong, who's also famous for the Jurassic Park series. JM, I'm sure you know about him. Ming Na Wen, I'm sorry if I'm saying her name wrong, but she was Fa Mulan, and she was in ER. She was in a TV show called ER, which my mom was a big fan of back in the day. She was also on Agents of Shield, so I think she was famous there as well. But yeah, I don't think she provided the singing voice of Mulan, but that's a kind of a recurring thing. Even I also remember in Pocahontas, the actress who voice acted Pocahontas did not do the singing part. And they often kind of do that sort of thing, having two different voice actors, like one for the lines and one for the singing. The Little Mermaid voice actress, so I think she was actually chosen specifically because she can sing. So that's one stark difference there.
I kind of wish Disney would do that for some of their live action remakes, because they keep casting actors who aren't necessarily known for their singing ability in these big budget remakes, like Emma Watson as Belle in the new Beauty and the Beast movie. I like Emma Watson. Maybe they should have thought about dubbing some of her songs over. I know it's a little harder to do with live action, but it's been done before.
Beyonce was Nala in the Lion King
Hmm.
remake, and Beyonce is one of the biggest superstars in the world, right? However, I have to say that when I was watching The Lion King and when you're listening to the songs part, it felt honestly, it felt more like Beyonce doing covers
Mm,
of the Lion King songs instead of her in character
mm,
singing in the songs in the story, if that even makes sense.
mm.
I'm not sure
No,
if
no,
that's even
I
making
think I
sense.
get what you're saying. I haven't seen the movie yet. To be honest, the trailers made it look creepy and unsettling, so I haven't gotten around to watching the new Lion King yet. But
Yeah. It is, I mean, it's worth watching. I didn't like it. I'll just straight up say that. I was not fond of it at all, but it's still worth watching. And it's on Disney Plus, obviously.
okay, I mean, like, I don't get why you would make these animals look photorealistic if they're gonna have to dance and sing anyway. Like, there's something creepy about a perfectly recreated lion that is
Yeah.
speaking. It's a little uncanny. And I think there's just this unintentional horror behind a lot of the visuals, at least in the trailer. I haven't seen the actual movie yet.
I mean, they did something similar for a movie that's quite old at this point called The Chronicles of
Oh
Narnia.
yeah, I
I
remember
think
that one.
there was no singing in that movie, but it was this, I think it was a similar visual method or,
Yeah, but at
know.
least Aslan had facial expressions, like, they gave his face a wider range of motion
Yeah.
than what I observed in the trailer, where it just looked like the lions were just kind of staring at the camera.
Yeah.
But again, I haven't seen the movie yet, so I have to withhold certain critiques.
The best, I would say, the best thing about it was the visual effects. I mean, it all, at the end of the day, we're having this conversation because it looks real, right? Everything
Mm,
there looks real. It's in a way, it's kind of mind blowing to know that almost nothing in that movie is real.
mm,
Everything is CGI except for the opening shot, which I think the director said, John Favreau said, is a shot of like the African sunrise. But everything else is
mm.
100% CGI, which is kind of mind blowing for how great it is, you know? But
Eh.
Yeah,
Kind
I
of
feel
makes you
like
wonder why they called it a live action remake, though, if they just animated like 99% of it.
yeah, yeah. I guess the opening shot, the fact that that was live action, is why
Yeah.
you can call it live action. But the rest
Okay,
of it
okay.
isn't. It's a photorealistic
Gotcha.
animated remake. That's the, I guess, most accurate way to put it.
Gotcha. Rose, were
yeah,
you gonna say something, buddy?
I feel like they just wanted to flex. They wanted
Hmm.
to flex what they could do with their technology.
Oh yeah, they've been doing the clips. I mean, the Jungle Book was kind of, you could call Jungle Book live action because the child actor was real, but everything else was CGI. But it was the same technology that they applied to it, and it was good because I thought that movie was okay. I thought Jungle Book was pretty good, and the CGI was just as real as it was in The Lion King. But my second point that I was making, like first we were talking about the voice actors in Mulan. Second thing, speaking of the voice actors and the characters they portray, did you gentlemen have a particular favorite character throughout the cast that we had?
I I feel like Mushu was my guy. If I had to pick a favorite character in Mulan.
Mushu was probably everybody's favorite, but like, did you have a favorite human character as well, or is it just Mushu?
Um, let me think about that for a second. I'm gonna look at the cast list real quick. See if anybody pops out.
I liked Yao, Harvey Firestein's character. The guy who was always grumpy. Like, I'm gonna hit you so hard it'll make your ancestors dizzy. He
Yeah.
was fun.
He was, yeah, I liked him. He reminded me a lot of Wolverine actually, because Wolverine is supposed to be the original Wolverine from the comics is supposed to be like a short, stocky character who is, really
Mm,
bulky and is
kind of
grumpy all the time.
gruff, yeah.
Yeah. So he reminded me a lot of Wolverine. I liked his character. I liked Yao as well. All the characters were great. Who I also really liked, I guess who would be my favorite is Chien Po, because this dude was such a pacifist
Mm,
throughout the second act where everybody's basically bullying Mulan. If you watch the movie closely, he hesitates to bully Mulan and he
Hmm.
tries to diffuse the situation. He from the beginning he tries to diffuse the situation, and throughout one of the scenes of the song "Make a Man Out of You," when everybody's tossing rocks at Mulan, he
Hmm.
hesitates to do it because he feels bad. So I feel like he has a really really good heart, and I feel like he's an underrated character too, because the main villain Shan Yu, he's got some superhuman strength. You
Hmm.
see how strong he is throughout this movie, but so does Chen Po. During the avalanche scene, with his own two hands, he lifted all of the soldiers off of the cliff.
Yep. And a
Bro,
horse.
that made no sense to me. I was calling that shit out during the movie. I was like, yo, he's using a group of people to pull up a horse and other people. Like, where do you get this strength from? Like, he could have just beat the whole Shang Yu army by himself if he that
Exactly.
damn strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is why, like, this is why it's not really a plot hole, because, it's just not addressed. If I were Mulan, like, toward the third act, I know that this movie is about Mulan, and the twist at the ending is, how Mulan spends the whole movie cross-dressing as a man.
Hmm.
The twist at the end is they save the day by cross-dressing as women, right? I guess that's kind of the twist.
Yeah.
Um, and I get that's all Mulan's idea. That's how she saves the day. But there are a lot of good characters in this movie, and they all like some of them have pretty good development. So if I were Mulan, I would be like, Chen Po, you don't know how strong you are. You have to believe in yourself, and help me fight Shan Yu. And then there could have been a scene of Chen Po be like, I don't know, Mulan, I don't know if I can do that. It's Shan Yu. And he's like, trust me, just trust me. And then maybe they face off a little bit, but Shan Yu fights dirty and knocks Chen Po out. Something like that, just for my own satisfaction, because they just decided to show how strong Chen Po was, right? He didn't do that in the movie. The last significant thing Chen Po does was take the emperor and like slide or glide down, the
Hmm.
wire of lanterns. That's the last significant thing that he did, right? But if I were writing the movie, I would have put that little extra thing for Chen Po. I'm just saying.
Farhad's over here about to start a Chen Po fan fiction community.
Oh
I
man.
mean, shit, he might need a movie. I had to check, make sure I wasn't watching like a Mulan Hercules crossover movie.
Man.
Oh
Yeah.
man.
But yeah, suffice to say, Chen Po was my favorite. Rams, did you have a favorite? It's cool if you don't. Like, that's. I was just curious if you did.
I mean, if anything, I love the dynamic between Yao, Chun-Po, and Ling, but
Hmm.
I didn't have a favorite human character.
It's a cool trio. Yeah.
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 Well, getting back to Mushu, this was obviously back in the day when Disney thought every hero had to have a comedic sidekick voiced by a real life comedian. Like it started with Robin Williams as the genie in Aladdin. Then we had Jason Alexander from Seinfeld as one of the gargoyles in Hunchback, and Don somebody. Okay, whoever voiced Phil. Hang on, the name will come to me for a second. In Hercules.
Donny Osmond? Oh, no, never mind.
No, it'd be funny if it was Donny Osmond, but like
My bad. He was in Mulan, but not Hercules.
Danny DeVito. Damn it, why didn't I think of that before? Yeah, Danny DeVito was like Phil. So yeah, Eddie Murphy was just the latest in a long line of comedians as Disney sidekicks.
Oh, man.
I actually thought Mushu came off as really manipulative in this movie on rewatch. He owns up to it late in the movie, but yeah, he actively puts Mulan in harm's way to make himself look good.
Basically.
Okay.
Like, as soon as he walks away, I'm like, yo, that's exactly what he told you not to do, and you're going to do that, basically.
Mm.
Here's the thing with that though. That scene where they're trying to deceive the what's the guy, the pompous witness guy that works for the emperor, who's there just taking notes.
Oh, uh,
Chifu.
Chifu. Yep.
He dresses up in a disguise of a soldier from the imperial army. He finds a
Mm.
panda, and he makes Cricky write a fake note that they're needed at the front. He did
Mm.
that. He was putting Mulan in harm's way, but if he hadn't have done that, China might have been doomed, right? Because the Hans had just finished attacking. Well, the little eagle or the hawk or whatever went and scouted some city in between them and the mountain valley that would bring them to the city of the emperor, right? And they attacked and they won that battle. So they would have ended up just going straight to the city, and they wouldn't have even known. I mean, the captain's army wouldn't have even known his recruits. So yes, Mushu was being selfish, but it's a good thing he was being selfish because they were needed at the front. You know what I'm saying?
It worked out in the end. I'm just thinking about character motivations in the moment because, at the time, he was saying, I've worked too long and hard for, Mulan to be sent home or that sort of thing. Like that was his rationale. And he does basically apologize for it later in the movie, but you don't often see sidekicks actively propel like the hero into danger like on purpose. So that's a bit of an unusual creative decision there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he had some dumb luck there. He tried a high risk, high reward move.
Well, he had the lucky cricket,
True.
one lucky bug.
He bet it all on red.
Cricky. So that's around the time that I started noticing one other plot hole. And this is the plot hole that kind of bothers me the most, and that's the number of soldiers in the captain's new recruit army. Okay. This is also venturing into the songs, which I wanted to talk to you guys about. And during the Make a Man Out of You song, we see, the progress that his army is making, the captain's army is making, Shang's army. And from the first scene at the camp, when Ping gets there and causes chaos, and they have to end up picking up every grain of rice. Which, by the way, I just want to point out, when I rewatched this movie, I watched it on 4K on Disney Plus, and man, does it look gorgeous there! You could really see every grain of rice in the grass, and that was
Stunning
there.
animation throughout
Yeah,
this movie.
oh,
The backdrops. I remember that shot where all of the professional soldiers ride out of camp on horseback in front of the mountains just stuck out to me as being especially beautiful.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a good looking movie. But
gorgeous.
anyway, yes, carry on.
It's gorgeous. Yes, I agree with you there. But yeah. So in that scene, it looked like there were maybe about 100 recruits. There were definitely more than 10, which is
Hmm.
my main problem with this movie. They establish a huge camp with a whole lot of recruits from all these other families in some province in China. And by the middle of the second act, up in the mountains, or toward the end of the second act, when Ping comes up with the idea of starting an avalanche, right, with the last cannon, there are only like 10 of them. Now, an answer I was trying to come up with to answer my own plot hole is, the whole song about Make a Man Out of You is Shang singing and saying, if you can't handle it, then just get out of here. You're not worth being part of my army. So maybe that wasn't just Ping who was going to be, you know,
Hmm.
who was going to be cut off from the army or let go of the army. Maybe there were other people, maybe there were other recruits who said, you're not fit for this, just go home. Maybe. However, toward the end of the song, the whole montage that they're having, when they're training with the poles, in the final shot of that, if you look behind Mulan or all around Mulan, there are like 50 or 100 other soldiers there, and that's at the end of the song. So how is it that this army goes from like 100 recruits to like 10 by the end of it? Doesn't make any sense to me. And then Shang is up there saying, it's time for us to fight. If we die of honor. Dude, there are 10 of you. There is no way you're about to fight 1,000 people coming down from you at the top of a mountain while they're on horses. You're all going to die if Ping hadn't done what she had done. That didn't make any sense to me at all. Going from 100 to 0 soldiers in the new recruit army for the captain. That was the biggest plot hole for me. And I know I've been ranting, but it's because I love this movie. I love this movie so much, and that really did bother me about it. I have to say, I have to get that out there.
I don't know. Maybe they had like a long line of scaredy cats They just chickened out because they were like, "Oh wait, we're going tomorrow," and they backed out. Maybe.
Maybe. Last minute drop offs.
Well,
Just didn't feel ready.
well, when it's finally revealed to them that Mulan is a woman, there was also an army medic with them. That medic was also not with them that entire time, like for that entire scene. He just kind of came out of nowhere. It's like that to me it was like, okay, so are there other people involved in this army somewhere? Like the chef also left, the chef that was at the camp. So how exactly does it just didn't make sense to me. And besides us speculating about it, I feel like there is no other answer, because like I said, I'm not supposed to think too deeply about it. Their only job is to tell this story that they're conjuring up, right? By the very end, by the final act, when Shan Yu takes the emperor hostage in his palace, none of the other soldiers are there. It's just the trio. It's Ling, Yao, Chen Po, and Shang. The rest of the soldiers, right after they drop that statue trying to like bust into the palace, the rest of the soldiers are gone. By then, it's like it's just them. Like, where are they disappearing to? Unless they were like on guard in the front or something. But that it just doesn't make sense to me. But whatever, I'll just overlook it. This is why the movie loses points for me. But I still love it anyway. But speaking of the songs, I would say "Make a Man Out of You" is probably the most iconic out of the songs here. Do you gentlemen have a favorite song from this movie?
Oh, that's got to be it.
Yeah.
We used to sing that in college at parties. I remember that was fun.
Yeah, that was a good song.
I'd say that's the top song for me as well.
I remember throughout like the scenes of that song, Shang was reminding me a lot of Jin Kazama from Tekken. So there's that song, but I also really like "A Girl Worth Fighting For," and I like it a lot because scenes throughout that song, the montage, are also kind of relevant to the story. For example, there's a point where they're marching through a village, and there are these girls picking vegetables, I think from the water, grass or whatever. They look at Mulan. Mulan looks away because she's shy, and the women start laughing. And I always interpreted that as those women in the field, they knew that Mulan is a woman. They could just see her and recognize that she's a woman, and that's why they start laughing. And they're laughing at the fact that the rest of the army hasn't figured it out yet. Either that, or they're laughing because they're laughing at the fact that Mulan thinks that she can get away with this or whatever. It's one or the other, but I think that's why they were laughing, I guess.
I always figured they just thought that Ping was cute. Maybe I assumed they figured he was a guy, but
Maybe actually, yeah, that could also be it, but I don't know. Women intuitively know a lot of things that men don't sometimes, so I just interpret it that way.
It could have went both ways on that one, because for me my first thought was that they think he's cute, but the point that you brought out, that I could see that as well.
Oh yeah, so just a little thing to ponder, but the main thing actually, which I think is the most I guess the most like hard hitting part of it, is the song is called "A Girl Worth Fighting For," right? And you guys know how that song ends. It ends like kind of like a oh shit sort of moment, right? Because they see that the city they're trying to enter is burned to the ground in the
yeah.
snow, right? Shang is looking for his father and his army. The army is also slaughtered along with the rest of the city. And then Mulan finds a little girl doll. It belonged to a little girl, and she puts it next to the sword that Shang puts, I guess, as kind of like an honorary burial for his dad. I saw this as a YouTube comment, and I kind of agree with this here. That's the girl worth fighting for. The little girl that was massacred along with the rest of the city. That's the girl worth fighting for. The innocent little girls and boys, the innocent children that you're going to war for. That's who you're fighting for. That's it was. I just read that from a YouTube comment.
Good
And I thought
take.
it was really interesting interpretation.
Hmm.
Adds a new weight to the song.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
If
Whether or
I
not they intended it, I don't know. Maybe they did intend it, and that was just like, they're just like a deeper meaning to it. But I
Mm.
like it. I actually thought that was a cool sentiment. This also, we were talking earlier about, why did the stone dragon not awaken, right? We were talking about that. And another, I think this comes from a YouTube video actually of a fan theory, which is maybe the stone dragon didn't awaken because it was already in Mulan. Like the spirit of the dragon was
Ah.
already in her. Because when she leaves, the ancestor statue glows green, and then the grandma wakes up and says Mulan is gone. Now, obviously, that's a different statue, but the fact that that happened, maybe the ancestor subconsciously had the stone dragon spirit go into Mulan, and that's how she was able to, persevere, I guess.
Mm.
If that's not it, then I can't think of a logical answer besides that. If that's not even the case.
Mm.
But
dragon retired and left it to Mushu. Mushu is the new dragon.
possibly, possibly. I mean, they are, yeah, from dragon to dragon, I guess. Um, but
Are they
I
interchangeable?
interchangeable.
Yeah, I'm just joking. Like, what are they
Oh,
interchangeable? Like, you see one dragon, you've seen them all, but no.
oh, right, right, right. But well, as far as songs go, because that's the last thing that we were talking about.
Mm.
I liked "Please Bring Honor to Us All." Like that song was
Mm.
okay. I didn't really like, the next song after that, which was Mulan singing to herself, who I
Oh, the
am and
reflection
stuff.
song.
Yeah, yeah, the
Yeah.
reflection song. Christina Aguilera did a cover of it, I think, but it's a it's an important song for her story. I'm just saying, I
Mm.
just wasn't really a big fan of it, of just how that song was or how it sounded. The rest of the songs were great. I
Yeah.
even liked the 98 Degrees song with
Stevie Wonder.
yes, the 98 Degrees song with Stevie Wonder. True to Your Heart. I also really liked that song
Yes.
as well.
I'm looking at it now because I was
Oh,
like,
the closing credits song.
yeah.
But,
'Cause
Yeah,
I was
that
gonna
was
say,
honestly kind of jarring. I thought it was a little weird that they ended the movie with that. But you know what? It was a good song.
yeah,
They just ended it with like Mushu getting yelled at on the temple
yeah,
steps and then just
yeah.
cut to black.
If I had to pick a second favorite song, it would actually be that one because it was a feel good song.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm.
It was a happy ending overall for the movie. I mean, it's a Disney movie, obviously. It's gonna have a happy ending. But yeah,
Mm.
it was a feel good song. It feels
Mm.
good hearing it, honestly. Besides that, I guess as far as the songs go, ranking the Mulan soundtrack. We were talking about just the Disney animated classics earlier and how you would rank Mulan in that. How would you rank the Mulan soundtrack to other Disney classics? The first one that I can think of is probably Pocahontas. I would rank that above this. Maybe also
Nice.
Beauty and the Beast, and then maybe Mulan comes afterward. I also haven't seen a lot of the classics in a long time, like The Little Mermaid. I remember the Lion King's ones a lot as well. Princess and the Frog, I'm not that familiar with, but I'm just saying from what I can recall, I
Mm.
would rank Pocahontas and Beauty and the Beast soundtracks before
Mm.
Mulan's. Do you guys have? Would you guys put Mulan in a specific rank from what else you can remember?
I definitely wouldn't put
Mm,
it as high as Beauty and the Beast, The Little Mermaid, Aladdin, The Lion King, or even some of the newer ones like Frozen. I think it's got a couple of good songs on there, but on the whole, it didn't really make much of an impression on me. I like you the "Make a Man Out of You" song a lot, and I actually did like the Reflection song and "A Girl Worth Fighting For," but on the whole, I thought the soundtrack was just okay.
Yeah, you mentioned Aladdin, and I can't believe I forgot to talk about that one as well. Realm, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, nor I.
oh no, y'all didn't interrupt me. I was still trying to look around to see the different soundtracks and what songs were on them because a lot of the Disney movies I didn't even delve into the soundtracks. I don't know, like there's a lot of them that had one particular song that was strong for me. And
Hmm.
I gotta say, like Lion King, Hakuna Matata went hard. You know what I'm saying? So I can't. I don't know if I can say like their entire soundtrack is better than Mulan though.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, same. Honestly, same for me. Only because, like I said, I haven't seen a lot of the classics again in a long time.
Mm,
Like Frozen definitely has more memorable songs, but I didn't want to bring the new studio soundtracks into this comparison
mm,
because that's not really a. I can't. I guess you can't really consider. You can't really consider Frozen a classic because it's like the new animation
mm.
studio. You know what I mean? Like the more like see computer generated ones instead of like the hand drawn ones. But we can bring them into this if you want.
Yeah,
Like, in
Disney
your
hasn't
opinion,
made a hand-drawn feature-length animated movie since I think the early 2000s. I think their last one was Home on the Range.
I was
Oh
gonna
no,
say
no, wait,
Princess.
no, they did Princess and the Frog. That's right.
Yeah,
In like 2009, but that's still a long time ago, at this point.
yeah. It's just more expensive to make to like hand draw all of it. So I can understand why they moved away from it. I was only
Mm,
saying because that's the last art style. That this movies came from like the studio of it. That's why I only wanted to keep the comparisons there. But they're all
mm,
Disney films, so I guess it's fair game to put Frozen in this as well. But
mm,
speaking of putting it all in one, the last thing that I wanted to talk about before going into closing statements and ratings was the remake of Mulan.
mm,
Now, this remake, which came out last year, they've been trying to make a remake of it long before remakes was a recurring thing, right? There was the Alice in Wonderland remake, then we had the Beauty and the Beast remake, we had the Lion King remake, Jungle Book remake, Dumbo remake. They're like remaking all of them, almost all of
mm.
them, right? And the Little Mermaid is on its way. The Mulan live action version, it went through a lot of developmental changes. I feel like eventually it became part of the trend of these remakes, but they were going to do this like before it even became a trend. That's the point I'm trying to make. And I haven't seen it, but I haven't heard great things about it. It has a good rating. It has like a 72 or even higher rating percentage on Rotten Tomatoes, which would make it a good film, right? But from the things I've heard of it, I already feel like I don't want to watch it. Like, first of all, Disney Plus was going to make you pay an extra $30 to watch it because this didn't come out in theaters, I don't think.
Mhm.
It came out right in the middle of the pandemic last year. So the only way you would get to see it is on Disney Plus. You'd have to
Mm.
pay $30 on top of the subscription you're already paying. Yeah. I mean, now you don't have to
Yep.
anymore, but for Premiere service, you had to pay a premium last year. So I
I
didn't
think you
see
can
it.
see it now if you have Disney Plus. I think it's on the regular
Yeah,
catalog. But yeah,
yeah,
at the time,
exactly.
I think the logic was they were going to charge you as though you would have taken your entire family to see this movie in normal times. So I guess they figured, oh, okay, you'd buy enough tickets for you, your spouse, your kids, the dog you snuck into the theater, your weird neighbor from across the street, all these people at once. So hence 35 goddamn dollars.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and I suppose it worked. I'm sure it was profitable too. I mean, Black Widow, which I mentioned off the record to you guys, I'm gonna go see that tonight myself,
Mm,
is also premiering on Disney Plus. You can
mm,
pay to watch it just like you did with Mulan, but it's also out in theaters because it's
mm.
become safe enough now with with the vaccine and stuff that people are starting to go back to the theaters.
Yeah,
But
Warner
Yeah, you
Brothers
can
did
pay
that
to
with
see.
Godzilla versus Kong, like on HBO. You could watch it on HBO Max or see it in the theater. Yeah.
right, right.
Wait, you can already see Black Widow. Like you can already pay to see it like from home.
I think so. I might be wrong
Oh,
about that actually. I'm not sure. Maybe you do have to wait a
that
little
would be
bit
great.
longer, but I thought
That would be great.
actually, now that you mention it, it would make sense that they wouldn't release it at the same time. JM, did Godzilla versus Kong release simultaneously in theaters and on HBO Max, or did one come out
Yeah.
before? They did. Okay. So honestly, Rams, I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was a simultaneous release, but I don't know if they're going to continue doing that now that most adults are vaccinated, but we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, we shall see. I don't think the Snyder Cut of Justice League ever came out in theaters. That was exclusive to HBO Max, I think.
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah,
sure.
just HBO
Um,
Max.
the next big Warner Brothers release is Space Jam: A New Legacy, right, with LeBron James,
Yeah.
and that.
Boy, that looks weird. I love Space Jam, but the
Oh
new
yeah,
one looks weird.
oh yeah, oh yeah. But yeah, for sure it does. But
Porky Pig is rapping. Like, did you see
Notorious
that clip?
Notorious Pig, yeah.
Notorious Pig.
Um,
Oh yeah.
but I don't know. Like we were just talking about if they are going to continue the trend of releasing simultaneously streaming and in
Mm,
theaters, maybe maybe not. Maybe they'll release it first in theaters and then later they'll let you stream it. I don't know. I don't know what
I
to.
know Dune, which is supposed to come out later this year, is only going to be released in theaters, but that's coming out in like October.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's significant. That's like the fall. We're in the middle of
Yeah,
summer, so
yeah.
that's significantly later. Okay. Well, yeah, so I haven't seen the Mulan remake. What I've heard about it personally is what kind of turns me off about it. Like, there are no songs. There are absolutely no songs, and it's not musical at all. There's no
Hmm?
Mushu. I told you guys about that early
Right.
on here. And the Mulan character, I guess the story or the message they're trying to send with this movie is not the same. The original Mulan, like the one that we spent this hour talking about, it's a story about how women don't have to live the way society tells them to. You don't have to always live to cultural norms or gender roles. You can be your own
Mm.
self. You can be who you want to be. And you can do that by working hard and persevering. That was the story of Mulan in this movie. In the remake, apparently, Mulan is someone born with special abilities, and that's how she becomes like the savior of the day or something like that. Something along those
Mm,
lines. Again, I haven't seen it, so that's just what I heard. And
mm.
apparently, there's no Mushu because they're trying to take away supernatural elements, apparently. But then there's
Wait, what?
also
But
what's
she
it?
was
Wait,
born with
they gave.
special abilities.
Right.
Yeah,
There's that.
Yes.
And
that's
there's
wild.
like some phoenix lady, like someone who can shapeshift. So if that's that doesn't make sense exactly. So if that's the reason why there's no Mushu, then that doesn't make sense. But I'm not sure. I'm just saying what I heard. None of this could be
Mm.
Yeah.
true because I haven't seen the movie. Also, the actress said some controversial things. You know how it can get with politics and Hollywood and stuff. She's said
Mm.
and done some controversial things around the time Mulan was releasing. I don't know too much about that. But there's also the controversy of where this movie was filmed. It was filmed in the same place that apparently the Chinese government is torturing a lot of their citizens or civilians, something
Mm.
along those lines. And Disney, didn't care or didn't do anything about that, didn't decide to film somewhere else or release a statement. Probably something to do with the Chinese government. I don't know. I'm just saying, with
Yeah.
all these things combined, I was fine not watching this remake. Like I was good with it. I love the original enough that like that satisfied me getting to see that. And if I feel like I want more, maybe one day I'll check out the direct to video
Mm.
sequel again someday, which is also on Disney Plus. But yeah. So I'm just saying that's how I feel about the
Yeah.
remake, even though I haven't seen it. Have you gentlemen seen the remake?
Nah, I just saw
Yeah.
like the cover art that they had on Disney Plus, and even the cover art looks a little off. So
Mhm.
I don't know. Remakes make me nervous. Remakes remake me nervous.
Yeah. I liked Pete's Dragon, and that's about the only Disney remake of the new crop that I actually enjoyed.
My
Most of
mom
them just,
loved that movie. She
yeah, no, the
loves.
new Pete's Dragon is great with Robert Redford and I think Bryce Dallas Howard.
Yes.
But yeah, the others either didn't leave an impression on me or just kind of ticked me off. So I'm not really getting excited anymore when they announce these.
So I'll just go. I don't know if I mentioned the scores, but I'll just go on record of letting you know when Al Rogers and I were reviewing the 2019 Aladdin, I gave it an 8 out of 10 because I liked it. He gave
Hmm.
it a 4 out of 10, and he hadn't seen the original Aladdin. Without even seeing the original, he gave the remake a 4 out
Oh,
of
he started with the remake.
10.
Damn.
Yeah, well, I mean, I saw the original, but because at the time in 2019, because I had just seen the remake, like that was fresh on my mind, so I wanted to review the remake.
Hmm.
I guess that pretty much wraps up my thoughts going into closing statements. I love this movie. I'll still, I'll point out the flaws of it because I love it so much, but it's always a great time. It's such a nostalgia factor for me. And I would recommend it definitely if people haven't seen it. Yeah, definitely see this first before you even think about seeing the remake for sure. Unless you just can't stand kids movies and it has to be, like mature stuff all the time, then fine. But I feel like you'd be missing out if you don't see 1998's Mulan. So that's my closing statement. Do you gentlemen have, along with closing statements, anything else you want to say before we go into ratings?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the villains. I mean, keep this brief, but they barely look human in this movie.
Yeah,
Especially the main bad guy. Like he's literally got claws, black and yellow eyes, and like
he's
he
terrible.
growls, and he's this weird, like animalistic creature. And I just
All
thought
of
that
them.
was there's this trope in kids' movies that kind of bothers me, which is oftentimes, the evil characters are presented as being ugly, with the logic being, well, if they're ugly on the outside, they were probably ugly on the inside too, which I'm not really thrilled about that. That's why I like the fact that in Avatar: The Last Airbender, Fire Lord Ozai is conventionally attractive, like good-looking guy, sociopathic, like mass murderer, but it sort of flips that trope on its head a little bit. But yeah,
and the
here it
and
was
the
just it was distracting. Like the guy's got black eyes with just these yellow irises and like clawed hands. Like, what are you doing, Disney?
Yeah, you that's definitely a valid point. I mean, the black scleras, that was kind of cool to me. The skin tone, that was totally off. That was completely unnecessary. I agree with you there. But the black scleras, that was cool. Like it was scary. They were trying to go
I
with like
mean,
kind of like a
if it
typical villain
was a
thing.
supernatural thing, like if this character was supposed to be a dark wizard or something, that would have worked. But not, he's just a military leader. Nothing supernatural about him.
Well,
He just looks
it
odd.
was no, I would say there's a little bit of a supernatural element to him because he's super strong, just like Chin
Yeah,
Po. You know.
Yeah, I was
maybe we
pretty
can.
convinced that at least a small percentage of them were not regular human beings. Like they got hit by a fucking avalanche and they popped back up like damn, I don't
Like
know,
daisies.
weeds in the ground. He's popping back up and they just started going back to war again.
Mm,
Yeah, that
yeah.
it's a valid criticism for sure, and it was definitely unnecessary for Disney to have done that. Even if it's something they typically do, still doesn't make it
Yeah.
okay. Rums, were you gonna say like, did you have other closing statements to make before we go into ratings, or do you want to just jump straight to
No, we could jump
ratings?
straight to ratings.
Okay, because I feel like we kind of interrupted you, but you weren't gonna
Oh,
say anything.
I was saying one movie that kind of helps go against the whole villains have to be ugly. Like, well, in a way, is The Hunchback of Notre Dame, who
Mm,
actually made
mm.
the hero ugly.
Oh, right. Quasimodo, the guy's
Yeah,
name was, right? Yeah, I
Quasimodo.
forgot about that movie.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie had gargoyles too. Yeah, completely forgot. That's another Disney classic. Okay, cool. So, without further ado, going into ratings, with how much I love this movie and how much I would recommend it, the highest I can give it from an objective standpoint, I think, is an 8 out of 10 tops.
Yeah, I'd give it a 7.5. I'm of about the same opinion.
Hmm. 7.
Okay, so maybe I'm just being a little generous, but I love
Eh,
this movie, and I feel like I was the most critical of it anyway. I mean, JM, you did bring up a really good point at the very end, but I spent this last hour just saying everything about it that I felt wrong
mm,
about it, despite it being a cartoon movie for
mm.
kids, right? So, but yeah, okay, fair enough though. These are still good scores, I would say. 7 is still, it's a good score. It's an okay score. Once we go lower than 7, then I feel like, when we went to school, 65 was a passing grade, right? So as long as we have that threshold there,
Yeah, mine's definitely not a bad 7.
yeah, good, good. I'm glad. So this was fun. Like it was fun talking about this movie, having a forum to talk about it with a couple of other enthusiasts. So this was definitely a fun ride for me. So I'm glad that we did this. I'm glad to have finally had the chance to review Mulan with some like-minded folks. Realms, you are up.
All right. It is not an anime. It is uh one of my favorite movies from way back that I saw, and it caught my attention, and I watched it multiple times since then. But it's been a while since I watched it again. It is Catch Me If You Can, starring
Oh,
Leonardo DiCaprio.
okay.
Leo DiCaprio and Tom Hanks, right?
Yes,
Woody.
sir.
Amy Adams, I think, was in that too.
Really
I think she was the girlfriend, but cool.
good actress. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember seeing like the middle toward the end of it, but I never saw it from the beginning. Interesting choice.
Yes,
'Cause
yes.
now I gotta read it. Yeah,
Sweet.
cool. What studio made this? Just because I'm curious, what if it's on a streaming service that I have that I could watch it on?
You may have to rent it
Okay.
on YouTube. They have it on YouTube
Ooh,
for like I think $3 or $4.
yeah.
Okay.
No worries. Yeah, I'll just do that then. Okay.
All right.
All right. Catch me if you can. That'll be next.
And catch
Back.
us if you
Yeah.
can.
Catch us.
Can't touch this.
Realms, JM, and FC. That concludes today's episode of MGI. You've been listening to the voices of
Chill with Realms.
Jurassic Mark.
Faerhad Targaryen. Catch us next month when we review Catch Me If You Can.
And if you don't catch us, dishonor on your family, dishonor on your cow.
Good one.
And what are you, a sheep?
Oh, man.